is Series 3 of Away, a podcast for anyone exploring 12-step sobriety. I'm your host, Steph Roberts. Hello. I am sorry it's been a while since I've recorded an episode, but I have a lot going on at work. And do I have a lot going on at home? Not really. The usual. End of summer, so everything feels a bit more serious. They did not train us well for that in school, giving us those months off. Anyway, I also have I guess it's circumstantial anxiety because of work stuff. We have a big event coming up and meetings and stuff, and it's all fine, and I've done it for years, but there's still a little anxiety, and I guess there should be. If you want to do a good job. Anyway, and I'm tired and, whiny. So I think we're on step 6 in the 12 and 12. And I doubt I'll get through the whole chapter tonight. But let's start. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Okay. We'll rephrase. We are entirely ready to be free of our blind spots, our damages, our anger, our anguish, our shame, our defects. We are entirely ready to be free of the problems we can see now. And note, it's ready. This step isn't anything more, again, than willingness and readiness. I'm ready to let go of a lot of these negative things. Okay, let's read. This is the step that separates the men from the boys, so declares a well-loved clergyman who happens to be one of AA's greatest friends. He goes on to explain that any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults without any reservations whatever has indeed come a long way spiritually and is therefore entitled to be called a man who is sincerely trying to grow in the image and likeness of his own creator. Okay, blah on the beginning line. But the important part here is that this step is about willingness. It's about a desire to be rid of the things that you discovered in steps 4 and 5. 6 and 7 coupled together are about wanting to change and then doing what needs to be done to effect change. I also like in this paragraph where he writes to try repeatedly step 6. So it's not like you do a step 6 and everything magically is lifted or disappears. It is a repeated and repeatable process. Okay. Of course, the often disputed question of whether God can and will, under certain conditions, remove defects of character will be answered with a prompt affirmative by almost any AA member. If you're a believer, be careful there, okay? God is there to give you the strength to do what you need to do, not to do it for you. Moving down the page a little. My own willpower just wouldn't work on alcohol. Change of scene, the best efforts of family, friends, doctors, and clergymen got no place with my alcoholism. I simply couldn't stop drinking, and no human being could seem to do the job for me. That's right. So God or not, no one can do this for you, not even God. It still means, no matter what, that you have to do some work. Nothing changes without you working for it, without you being sometimes uncomfortable. Moving on. In AA meetings all over the world, statements just like this are heard daily. It is plain for everybody to see that each sober AA member has been granted a release from this very obstinate and potentially fatal obsession. So in a very complete and literal way, all AAs have become entirely ready to have God remove the mania for alcohol from their lives. And God has proceeded to do exactly that. And, I'm going to add, and you have done the necessary and uncomfortable things to do just that. God has helped you, perhaps, if that's what you believe. I don't. Having been granted a perfect release from alcoholism, why then shouldn't we be able to achieve, by the same means, a perfect release from every other difficulty or defect? No. That is entirely unrealistic. Sobriety isn't a perfect release from anything. Nothing is a perfect release. It requires hard work. It gets easier and easier and easier and easier. It's uncomfortable at first. And that's this idea of perfect release, I think, is really unrealistic. But if you were willing to try the alcohol thing, then maybe you're also willing and ready to do the same process in a manner with these other problems. So I think that's at the core of what he's saying here. Take out the perfect release part. If you were in the beginning of this willing to do the things necessary to make this change, perhaps by now you're willing to do the necessary things to make the next changes. Skip down. When men and women pour so much alcohol into themselves that they destroy their lives, they commit a most unnatural act. Defying their instinctive desire for self-preservation, they seem bent upon self-destruction. So that seems a little contradictory when in the big book it talks a lot about we have the wrong instincts. This is your natural instinct as an animal, as a mammal, for self-preservation. And it may seem to contradict what the big book said, and it kind of does. But Bill, human, as we know, there is some contradiction. There's a great article about this and him and the contradictions in a lot of his writing by Susan Cheever, and I just don't remember what publication it's in. Just Google her article on Bill Wilson. Skipping down. But most of our other difficulties don't fall under such a category at all. Every normal person wants, for example, to eat, to reproduce, to be somebody in society of his fellows, and he wishes to be reasonably safe and secure as he tries to attain these things. Indeed, God made him that way. He did not design man to destroy himself by alcohol. But he did give man instincts to help him stay alive. I mean, whatever. You believe in God, great, he gave you all this. You don't believe in God. It's still true that we have an instinct for self-preservation, as do all other animals. And I'm not entirely sure every normal person wants to reproduce or wants to eat. There's a need to eat. There used to be a need to reproduce. I think we've sort of evolved out of the need. Though it still drives us, I think, but I don't want to reproduce. I don't care about being somebody in society, though I know plenty of people who do. But again, this was his day and is a reflection of his wants and his experience. So probably should be clearer about that in this writing. I mean, this next paragraph on the top of page 65 is just dumb. It is nowhere evident, at least in this life, that our Creator expects us fully to eliminate our instinctual drives. So far as we know, it is nowhere on the record that God has completely removed from any human being all his natural drives. Duh. And the next paragraph, I feel like Bill gets really preachy, and I don't at all like that, as you know. He sounds like a preacher. So we're going to skip that, because otherwise I'll do it in a really sarcastic, obnoxious tone. All right, skip down. So step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, is AA's way of stating the best possible attitude one can take in order to make a beginning on this lifetime job. So like if you have a sponsor or someone telling you got to do it all now, you got to do it perfectly now, shh. Tell them to shush. The keys here are attitude and beginning. This does not mean that we expect all our character defects to be lifted out of us as the drive to drink was. A few of them may be, but with most of them we shall have to be content with patient improvement. Improvement implies work on your part. The key words entirely ready underline the fact that we want to aim at the very best we know or can learn. So he's saying it, which isn't clear enough, I think, in the big book. Obviously, these steps 6 and 7 were given short shrift. But this is it. It's progress. It's improvement. The question is, do you want to change something else? Are you willing to do more to try to change something else? That's it. Next page. Even then, the best of us will discover, to our dismay, that there is always a sticking point, a point at which we say, no, I can't give this up yet. Yet. That's the key word. Because you can't do it all at once, period. No matter what people say. The people who say all their defects were lifted magically or left them magically usually have a lot of glaring defects that they should be working on, but because they think they were lifted magically, it's like the lazy man's way out. It's one at a time. And you may see some defects that you're not willing to let go of yet. And I use defects as a holding word, right? I don't mean it as defects. You know, I mean damages or anguishes or, whatever that means to you. You may see some that you're not willing to let go of because they have been tools that have kept you safe or have helped you to feel safe, to have protected yourself. So there may be a few, like in a never column, I'm never going to let go of that. And I'm just saying, as time passes, you may become willing to let go of that. Nevers may move to maybes, maybes may move to yeses. This is very much the same when we get into step 9, 8, and 9, like amends and stuff like that. Okay, reading. Some who feel they have done well may dispute this. So let's try to think it through a little further. Think it through is a good one. Practically everybody wishes to be rid of his most glaring and destructive handicap. True. No one wants to be so proud that he is scorned as a braggart, nor so greedy that he is labeled a thief. No one wants to be angry enough to murder, lustful enough to rape. I would argue that rape has nothing to do with lust. That's, just my opinion, but I think it's fact. gluttonous enough to ruin his health. No one wants to be agonized by the chronic pain of envy or to be paralyzed by sloth. Of course, most human beings don't suffer these defects at these rock bottom levels. We who have escaped these extremes are apt to congratulate ourselves. Yet can we? After all, hasn't it been self-interest, pure and simple, that has enabled most of us to escape? Not much spiritual effort is involved in avoiding excesses, which will bring us punishment anyway. But when we face up to the less violent aspects of these very same defects, then where do we stand? I mean, again, this is a little contradictory. Not much spiritual effort is involved in avoiding excesses, which will bring us punishment anyway. All of us have trouble with that, or we wouldn't be here. Anyway, what we must recognize now is that we exult in some of our defects. We really love them. Who, for example, doesn't like to feel just a little superior to the next fellow, or even quite a lot superior? Is it that we're exulting in it? This is my question. Is it that we're exulting in it, that we love it, or are we terrified of giving it up? Because again, these are things that have made us feel safe, that are maybe no longer working for us, but once did, once protected us, once helped us, or we felt as if they did. So the prospect of giving them up is very difficult. I'm not sure that everyone exults in them so much or loves them. And the superiority thing, you may not identify with that. I certainly, every now and then like feeling a little bit superior to someone, but it's mostly about like rudeness. Talking on your cell phone and public transportation kind of thing. But then I find that when I need to talk on the phone, I don't do it because I'm not an entitled blech. But it's like torture because I'm like, ugh, I judge people in my head all the time for their rude behavior, which forces me to not engage in the very same rude behavior. So, I mean, I guess it's a win, like a win-win, but whatevs. Okay, moving on. To think of liking lust seems impossible. No, it doesn't. But how many men and women speak love with their lips and believe what they say so that they can hide lust in a dark corner of their minds? And even while staying within conventional bounds, many people have to admit that their imaginary sex excursions are apt to be all dressed up as dreams of romance. Shut up, Bill. This is like, again, because he couldn't stop cheating on Lois. Every chapter has to come back to the sex life defects. I mean, own it, Bill. Own it. And move on. On that note, I'm tired of of the lust, and somehow lust and rape are intertwined. And I'm just tired, and I love you, and I don't know if all this helped at all. I certainly hope it did. Just one person. I hope you know, no matter what, there is a way.